Welcome to Va-Dor, our Touch of Torah and Touch of Music with Andy Susman tonight. It is April 26th, Tuesday evening. Each Tuesday with Va-Dor, we have Torah study. Rabbi Barry will not be with us tonight. We are privileged and honored to have Andy Susman with us to discuss Torah and to play some beautiful music on his guitar for us. Thank you. Take it away, Andy.
Well, thank you, Sharon and company. Rabbi did speak with me. I will have some comments that he shared. We'll do that in process. Let's begin with a song. We're gathered together as brethren and sisters. Hine matohu manai, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matohu manai, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Behold how good and how pleasant it is for all to dwell together. Behold how good and how pleasant it is for all to dwell together in unity. Hine ma tov, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai. Well, so thank you for joining us and for Touch of Torah and some music. And since it is Torah, I want to begin with what I would consider our anthem as Jews or modern Jews in the last, 50, 60 years. This tune has been around. And it's Al Shlosha Devarim. And I'll sing it in Hebrew and in English so you'll know exactly what the text means. Al Shlosha Devarim. The whole world stands on three things. Al Shlosha Devarim Ha'olam Omed. On Torah and on prayer and on deeds of loving kindness. Al HaTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. So on three things, on Torah, on prayer and worship, and on deeds of loving kindness. All three pillars is what the world is based on. And so we're going to try to incorporate all three of those tonight. And we really should do that whenever we discuss Torah. So I want to screen share. But before I do, I'd like to greet everybody. And if anybody has something, a little bit of nachas they want to share before we get started. Yeah, something really pressing that was really, really positive this week? Okay, maybe not. Okay, I'm going to screen share, and well, I guess that didn't work as good. Oh, okay, there we go. We're good. Let me go to this page. There we go. So, can you all see where it says, "In each day the truth had to be found"? You all see that? Okay. Okay. So take a look at that. Each day the truth had to be found anew, as if it had never been known. The true worship of God is not in finding the truth, but rather in total abandonment of self. And this past Saturday, I once a month I lead a Torah prayer study, I should say, more than Torah, prayer study. And Paul usually shows up for that. And I happened to decide to share this. And so the idea is, what does it mean to abandon self in the context of prayer? Well, what it means is that you are open to being surprised. The word daven, it means to be open to something new, to allowing the experience to be what it needs to be. Because if you come to prayer with a preset notion, you're not going to get out of the experience what it's supposed to be. And, the minute you have a preconceived expectation, either you'll be satisfied or you'll be unsatisfied. There's a constant judgment process. So tonight, I'm hoping that, yes, you might have some expectations, but I think if you have some degree of curiosity and openness, we will all leave here better for it. Okay, so that's that. Now, I want to do this up front because the rest of the evening is going to be a little more tedious and not even tedious, but packed full of stuff. So tonight's discussion is going to include the Yom Kippur, a little bit of Yom Kippur, and coming before God. Now, back in the day, we had the temple worship. And by proxy, the priests prayed for us. And we can talk about how that evolved. But long story short, fast forward to more recent times, the Amidah is the surrogate process of the priesthood. We have our own connection with God when we get to and pray the Amidah. So we begin the Amidah, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but we begin the Amidah with the following line. You're all familiar with it. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi tehillah. Eternal One, open my lips that your wisdom may flow through me. Didn't realize I had changed the wording there for a little Jewish renewal flavor there. Now, when we get to the end of the Amidah, we close with these words. Okay. Yiyu liratzon imrefi v'hegyon libi lefanecha. Yiyu liratzon imrefi v'hegyon libi lefanecha. Adonai tsuri, Adonai tsuri, Adonai tsuri v'goali. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you. O God, my rock, Adonai, my rock, God. O God, my rock and my redeemer. So pause for a second, because what I'm going to share now is going to be reprised momentarily, soon. We just had a sandwich. We opened with Adonai Sifatai. The Amidah is what's in the middle, and we close with this line. We open up with asking God to help us pray or to hear our prayers. And then at the end of that process, we seek affirmation that our prayers were heard. Think of it as a sandwich. We just got through Pesach, Hillel's sandwich. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that document. There we go. All right, so now we are into talking about Torah explicitly. So you will notice at the top of the page, it says number 26. A few weeks ago, a month ago, we were studying the portion Shemini. And in the portion Shemini, it opens up talking about the death of Aaron's two sons, Nadav and Avihu. And here's a nice, interesting picture. You can all see that crazy picture. Nadav and Avihu were like apprentices, and they were sort of brought on board to be mentored and learn the trade, learn the family business. And just earlier, Aaron and Moses had already given a sacrifice, and now they sort of snuck in and unauthorized tried to do their thing, and they were snuffed out. So the question is, and the Rabbi talked about this. Ironically, I was with Rabbi a month ago for that Torah portion. So we'll get into the fine print of that real quickly. So what I want to do is take a few moments to reprise this one because it dovetails into this week's portion explicitly. So, Parashat Shemini, the way of strange fire. Now I'm going to make this a little larger. Okay. Now, I was working on this afternoon, and I happened to I wasn't looking for this, but it kind of made sense. It kind of worked out. I don't know how many are familiar with LGBTQ movement and the LGBTQ arm of Jewish movement, but they are a vibrant force, and there are rabbis in that movement just as well as other traditional rabbis. And so I came across this is a summary or interpretation on that portion. The bottom line is the fact the word queer might mean just odd or different. So something was different or odd about Nadav and Avihu. We don't know precisely. There's all sorts of explanations. None are conclusive. But the idea is what is it that can we allow for difference? Now, as I was reading many different interpretations of Acharei Mot, which is this week's portion, I came across one by a famous rabbi in New York who happens to be gay. And he wrote an interpretation speaking about his bar mitzvah. Now he's probably in his 40s, but speaking about his bar mitzvah. And his bar mitzvah was not a positive experience. One, perhaps because he was beginning to realize his choice or his makeup, but also because he couldn't truthfully come out at that age, especially going back 30 years ago, 35, 40 years ago. And so he wrote his sermon as if his bar mitzvah had come along, and he would have his hand on the shoulder of that 13-year-old. Very interesting interpretation or sermon of Acharei Mot. But the reason why I say that is I'm going to share that with you in this portion, Shemini. In Shemini, well, hang on, fast forwards. Hang on a second. Okay, so sorry about that. All right, I'm jumping ahead of there because the actual line is in the next one. Okay, so the line from this portion is, I will be sanctified through those who are nearest me, thus I will be honored before the entire people. So for whatever reason, Nadav and Avihu were extinguished, and we don't really know why. Okay, so I'm going to have to fast forward to the next portion. So here we go. Boom. All right. So let me make this larger so you can all see it. Just as a little of my pet shtick is the transliteration of Hebrew. This week's portion is called Acharei Mot, after the death. And you've got 6 different biblical interpretations that I visited to prepare for today, for this portion. And each one spelled it slightly different. Some are similar, different. So the first one says Aher Mot, Acharei Mot, Acharei Mot, different spellings for Acharei. Now the last one has a K in it, which really is not my cup of tea when it comes to that sound. Takes us in the wrong direction. But all the ones that use a CH, M-O-T, I'm cool with. R-E-I, R-E-Y, Acharei Mot. Okay, so I'm sure you've seen different transliterations, but I just want you to be aware that what is the uninitiated thinking when they see different things. Look at the let's see, the second one, the word moth. Come on. We've all seen that, but we always probably scratch our head. Why do they do that? Okay. Anyway, on that note, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the portion. Okay? So the two sons die. So I'm going to ask you guys to do a little reading. So I'm going to actually unmute. Everybody unmute. And I'm going to start with Joel. Would you please read? The Lord spoke.
The Lord spoke to Moses after the death of his two sons of Aaron who died. I got to move it over. Let me see if I can get it. I can't get past.
I'll pick it up. Who died when they drew too close to the presence of the Lord. How much do you want us to read?
The paragraph.
Oh, God said, tell your brother Aaron that he is not to come at will into the shrine behind the curtain in front of the cover that is upon the ark. Instead, Aaron shall only enter the holy shrine when he is clean and dressed in his sacred garments. He shall take animal offerings to make atonement for himself and his household. He shall purge the shrine of the uncleanness and transgression of the Israelites, whatever their sins, and he shall do the same for the tent of meeting and make it holy.
Okay, so then Aaron shall lay his hands upon the head of a live goat and confess over it the iniquities, transgressions, whatever their sins, putting them on the head of the goat. Then the goat shall be sent off to the wilderness through a designated person, and the goat will carry all the iniquities to an inaccessible place, and the goat set free. So we had this construct where we had two goats. One was sacrificed, one was the scapegoat, and it would take away our sins. Actually, it's more graphic than that. It was pushed over a precipice, and boom, our sins are gone. Pretty gruesome. Now, it says, in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, you shall practice self-denial. Now, that's the signaling of Yom Kippur. The 7th month, 10th day of the month. I don't know how many of you knew that. The first month of the Jewish calendar is actually Nisan for Pesach. And so the 7th month is when we celebrate the high holidays with Kislev. So, it says, the last line there, it shall be a Sabbath of complete rest for you, and you shall practice self-denial. It is a law for all time. Okay, so it's the Shabbat Haggadah. All right. So the reason why I bring this up is Rabbi was talking about the idea of kashrut, and one of the verses in that section, then the Lord told Moses, no blood is to be eaten by any Israelite or any stranger who resides among you. In any manner, for the life of the flesh is in the blood. Now, I know many of us grew up traditional. My grandparents were very much strict kashrut in their home. And I remember the meat was just bland, overcooked leather all the time. No blood. Now, my mom was totally otherwise. She loved the blood. But the bottom line is, if you're a vegetarian, blood's not an issue because there's no blood. Done. The conversation's done. So Rabbi brought up this tradition that apparently he's trying to inculcate in the Va-Dor, Meatless Mondays. And you guys can unmute. How many of you participate in some capacity? Are you changing your diet? Is it Monday? Is it a different day? Anybody want to? I want to hear from different people about the issue of introducing meatless protein into your diet. Anybody?
I will. I have tried to do that at least once or twice a week. That I just eat vegetarian type or salads or lentil soup or some kind of vegetarian soup. And I know Suzanne does that as well almost every day.
You outed her. Thank you. She's quiet. Come on, Susan. You want to share something else, Suzanne, about that?
What are friends for? I really don't like eating meat that much. I mean, sometimes I do, but I try.
Well, do you have fish? I mean, what's the various menu options?
I eat fish, or I eat tofu, or beans. I don't really consider myself a vegetarian or anything, but I just minimalize.
Gotcha.
That's all.
Okay. All right. So the idea is, what does it mean to be pure? And so, if no blood is the essence of proper kashrut, then we all have a problem when we grill a burger, because ideally we would have to grill it to medium well, or well, and otherwise we're hedging. And so maybe there's one issue. All right. So let me fast forward down there a little bit. All right. So Rabbi mentioned that vegetarianism is the human ideal. All right, let's move on. So as I was reading, I came across at the end of ACHAREI MOT. At the end of ACHAREI MOT, the latter portion, it has these verses. Now, I mentioned to you earlier about the sandwich. A couple weeks ago, we had Pesach. We had the matzah, charoset, and maror sandwich, Hillel sandwich. I just shared with you that when we do the Amidah, we open with a particular line, Adonai Sefatai, and we close with Yu Leratzon. Open my mouth, and then I'm hoping my prayers were received. A sandwich. So at the end of ACHAREI MOT, we have a few lines of interest. So, Harris, would you be so kind as to read the English? I am the Lord.
I can't read it because I'm blocked off by the pictures.
Well, this is a challenge for me, because when we screen share, we like participation. You're not able to move things around with your mouse?
No, I have the same problem Joel had.
I can do it.
Okay, whoever can read, please do.
I, the Lord, am your God. You shall not copy the practices of the land of Egypt, where you dwelt, or of the land of Canaan, to which I am taking you, nor shall you follow their customs. My norms alone shall you observe, and faithfully follow my laws. I, the Lord, am your God.
Okay, so when I saw that, those two lines, I, the Lord am your God, I, the Lord, am your God, right away I'm thinking a sandwich again. So I want you to take the visual. I got a visual for you. There's some Hebrew, and I actually could chant that for us. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Yisrael ve'amarta alehem, ani Adonai Elohechem. Okay, so there's the verses, and I made a sandwich out of it. Anybody hungry? Okay. Anyway, so the laws. Okay, so here's the deal when I read it. So you shall not copy the practices of the land of Egypt, where you dwelt, or of the land of Canaan, where you're headed. Oh, there it is. Another sandwich. We got our existence in Egypt. We've got the promised land down the road a bit. What's the middle? The wilderness. Our 40 years of wandering. Okay? So the question is, the people that we are now largely was forged in the wilderness. Now, of course, it's morphed even beyond that, but the Torah as we know it, largely the book of Leviticus, the book of Bamidbar coming up, are byproducts of the Exodus. And so the two things, Egypt and Canaan. So some of the mythology that's been inculcated in our minds and in our souls are based on our experience in Egypt and our expectations of what's coming. Now, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Let me keep scrolling along here. Okay, so here's the line in the last portion, Shemini. I got a little ahead of myself because the line that I was looking for is at the end of Acharei Mot. So the third section of Acharei Mot, chapter 18, talks about sexual improprieties, all kinds of sexual improprieties. What we should do, what we should not do. And it says, do not come near a woman during her menstrual period. Do not get involved with siblings or aunts or uncles or children. You got to be some degree of practicality and modesty and whatever. But toward the end, here we are. Do not lie with a male as one lies with a woman. It is an abomination. Do not have carnal relations with any beast. Do not defile yourselves in any of those ways. For these are the very reasons that I am casting out the people who were in the land before you. But you must keep my laws and my norms, and you must not do any of those abhorrent things, neither the citizen nor stranger residing amongst you, lest you defile yourselves through them. Once again, the phrase, I, the Lord, am your God. Okay, so
Andy.
I'm going to...
Andy.
Yes.
So what you just read then, the gay population would not like that, needless to say.
That is exactly right. That was the opening gambit of this rabbi's text. That he didn't mention it specifically, but it was on the page as a citation from Leviticus, and he was addressing that. So I'm going to stop screen share, and now we're going to begin talking. So the question is, I share with you opening up. Acharei Mot, you had this mysterious death of the sons of Aaron, and what were they doing? Well, one of the verses, which I guess I might have ran over real quick, was apparently one of the proscriptions of coming into the Holy of Holies is you come alone. You come alone before God. And that, to me, triggered in my mind the Amidah. Now, the Amidah comes at the end of a involved introductory sequencing. We pray together as a community in a minyan, but when we get to the Amidah, we stand alone before God. And so we are I imagining that the Amidah was a construct adapted where there was no more a Holy of Holies, there's no more a priesthood, and the question is, what do we feel is our moment to be with God? How do we be with God? And we all have different ways of praying. Many of us don't like going to shul. We are culturally Jewish. We are intellectually Jewish. We are gastronomically Jewish. But so the question is, like Sharon just pointed out, that particular line in the Torah will not work in today's world for most of us, either if we're gay, LGBTQ, or even if we love someone who's gay. We have family members or friends or neighbors. Now, I'll share one more thing, and I want to just hear some participation, because part of Va-Dor is making the Torah relevant. So I'm going to be honest. There are different ways that I can come out to all of you right now. Now Sharon's probably thinking, what is he going to say? I am a lefty. Once upon a time, it was verboten to be a lefty. You were forced to be righty. My mother was one of those people. She had an abominable handwriting. I felt bad for her. I think it pained her throughout her life to not be able to celebrate her hand dominance. But that was the world we lived in. They thought it was nothing. We'll force them to be righty. They'll fit in. It's a righty world. You need to be righty. Well, guess what? In my mind, that is only a scintilla of the type of importance one's gender identification or sexual preference, if you in different perspective, it is compared to hand dominance. So today, we're living in an amazingly fraught society. I'm almost I scratch my head that we're not a little more sophisticated than we are. We're going back to the 1950s or the 1890s. So many of us are backward thinking instead of forward thinking. So who wants to share? Well, let's talk about the sunshine state of Florida. Don't say gay. Go for it, Valerie. Unmute and just jump right in.
Suzanne has her hand raised.
Okay.
Valerie had her hand raised. Whoever, you can acknowledge.
Okay.
Go for it.
Well, I was just thinking that, part of what you're saying and part of what you're reading is one of the reasons why there's such a problem within the Jewish family, if you will, the Orthodox, the conservative, the Reform. That's one of the schisms. One of the reasons that we have these schisms is because in the modern society, a lot of these conceptual ideas were done when they were first, quote unquote, created, because there were health issues. There might have been health issues, sanitation issues, what have you, which don't exist in the modern world. So it's really hard to wrap your head around that, because we believe that, we are intelligent human beings. God gave us the right to think. God gave us the right to develop. We have developed medicines. We've developed different ways to live in a freer society. And that's a God-given gift if you believe that we have intelligence. And I think that counters the philosophy that we have. God has given us brains to think and create medicines and create all ways to protect ourselves. And yet it pulls us back into and antiquated philosophies, if you will. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're having such a problem, with modern Judaism.
Well, we're having a problem because, say that again?
We're having a problem because so many Jews do not want to believe those ancient philosophies, those ancient.
Right. So there's a schism between the people that want to hang on to the past,
right,
and those that are willing to change as time moves on.
Right. And people believe that God gave us the intelligence to develop medicines, to develop. It's the same thing like don't mix meat with milk. Okay, they had something called trichinosis. Well, we don't have that anymore. Well, we have homogenized milk now. There's so many things now that don't fit in to the ancient philosophies, and so many Jews are reticent to move forward, even though there's no reason for them to stay behind.
Right. And one of the things I kind of chuckle about is the Orthodox are some of the most tech savvy of anybody when it comes to new devices, but when it comes to trying to move our faith into the 21st century, they're back in the 11th century. So Alec, I want to thank you for joining us. You have reduced the median age by at least 5 years. Would you be so kind as to weigh in on some aspect of this conversation?
So the way I was grown up is to accept everyone. Unless you do me wrong, then there's going to be consequences. That's how I feel about everyone. I don't judge people. If you're a lefty, that's perfectly fine with me. If it doesn't bother me. I can't speak for everyone my age, but that's just how I was grown up.
Okay, well, I'll tell you. Speaking of the younger generation, and you're even beyond that. I'm talking about maybe the 20s and 30-year-olds. They're really into tattooing, and that is verboten. That is forbidden. And yet there are a lot of 40-somethings that are tattooed, and you always pop. So the question is, at some point, you got to let it go. Just let it go.
Exactly.
You know, and look past the surface into their heart and soul. So I appreciate your commentary there, Alec.
Thank you.
Okay, go for it, Sharon.
I wanted to say one thing. You just brought up the tattoo issue. I know, is that written in the Torah that a Jew cannot be tattooed?
Well, good question. Specifically, is that in the Torah? It could be in the Mishnah. I'm not sure if it's in the, but yeah, I actually have to look that up
Okay,
specifically.
so a lot of people here know that I usher at the Kravis Center, and there was a person that came in last week to the Kravis Center. I mean, from head all the way to their toes, tattooed. Every inch of their arms, every inch of their legs. It was a woman. And everybody was looking. Everybody was looking at this young woman, I would say maybe 35 or so. And I said to my co-usher, I said to her, I said, some people just go crazy with tattoos. I don't mind onesie twosies, but that was like head to toe. I think her cheeks were the only thing that didn't have tattoos on. And she said, well, I have a tattoo. And I was like, oh my God, I was embarrassed. And she was like older than me, I think. And she had a tattoo across her arm and she had another one on her shoulder, which was fine. It was cute. It was cute. But anyhow, I wanted to know I know there was something that said that you can't be buried in the Jewish religion if you have a tattoo. Well,
Okay.
what about all the Holocaust survivors that were tattooed against their will?
Well, first off, Suzanne has her hand up, and then I'll respond. Go, Suzanne.
I
Okay.
looked it up online, and it says Leviticus chapter 19, verse 28 says, you shall not make any gashes in your flesh for the dead or tattoo any marks upon you. So it does prohibit tattoos, but it doesn't give an explicit reason why, but it says you could still be buried in a Jewish cemetery.
Yeah. So what they do? Yeah, I was going to say that. They still bury you. What they do is they remove it. Now, as far as the I don't know if the woman's got tattoos over the whole body. That's another comment. But as far as being a Holocaust survivor, that was something that was beyond your control. So and so there might be a special dispensation. They might even leave that on because you survived death in that whole experience. Maybe there's a special edict, whatever. But I'm going to share with you an interesting story about the tattoo. The Holocaust tattoo. The year is 1989. The Holocaust Memorial in Miami Beach had been open about a year. I'm not quite sure exactly. And it's March. I think it was a Tuesday afternoon, ironically, probably about 3 in the afternoon. And I took my father down to Miami Beach. He lived in Miami Lakes. I was married and living in Coral Springs. And I took him down to Miami Beach to look at the Holocaust Memorial. Very impressive. I'm sure many of us have been there with the arm in the air. So it was a very pleasant afternoon, balmy, maybe the mid-70s, whatever it was. And maybe there was a half a dozen people there. No, not too many people. And all of a sudden we hear a cry. It's wrong! It's wrong! And my father and I look at each other like, what is going on? So we walk over to this elderly gentleman and we say, what's wrong? What's wrong? The number, it's on the wrong side of the arm. And we say, well, but how do you know? Because I used to do the numbers. Fast forward, the man survived the Holocaust. He was in Auschwitz, and he was a tailor. I had asked him for his business card, and he had this little yellow sheet of paper business card. He was from Toronto, and he was a tailor. So he had a skill that could save his life. Now here's the deal with the numbers. Different camps put the numbers in different places. Some put the numbers on the outside of the forearm, some on the inside of the forearm, some on the ankle, the lower part of the calf area. Some didn't do it at all. Some did it, stopped, started again. There was a lot of different traditions in different camps. But this was my meeting a Holocaust survivor who escaped death. And I hung on to that business card. I was going to invite him to my son's B'nai Mitzvah. And every few years, my kids were like newly born at that point, a year old or something. Every year or so, I'd take it out and I'd look at it. It's like, when the day would come when I would have to reach out and say, I'd like to invite. But when the day finally came, I decided it was kind of impractical. What's it going to do? So, and I had it for many years. I can't tell you where it is now, but as recent as 5 or 10 years ago, I still had it. So anyway, on that note, anybody else want to share? Yes, Harris got to unmute. But let me make sure we circle back. The question is, that this whole premise of this portion is what puts us on the wrong side of the law such that we are verboten, as opposed to maybe the law needs to be reinterpreted. Go ahead, Tess.
It really doesn't matter. Most Jews today are non-practicing Jews. And I'm sure every year more Jews fall out. Where I live, I'm the only one that went to synagogue in my whole section.
Oh, that's an interesting response. Where did you grow up?
Philadelphia.
Beautiful city, phenomenal Jewish culture. I love Philadelphia.
Thank you.
And I got stories, but some other time. But I want to address what you said. It's very interesting. And those of you who know me, we've been together for 3 years now, roughly 2.5 years, intimately, maybe 3.5 more informally. My mission is that Jews don't fall out. They don't have to be Orthodox or conservative. They don't have to go to shul all the time. Even if you went once a month, that'd be fine. But the idea is stay connected. Let's celebrate our identity. So the question is, and I know many of us subliminally think this, that the only salvation for the future is orthodoxy. By proxy, they're keeping our tradition alive. But the question is, to what extent are they pushing people away? As some of us have said, as Valerie said. So here's the deal, and I always come back to this. Rabbi Barry and his vision of cosmic Judaism, the blending, the nexus, the interface of tradition, science, and spirituality. Each of us are part of this community. As we sit here and study Torah and think about Torah, how do we ensure that we move forward and bring our traditions with us, even as they are morphed for the meanings that we see now?
That's a very, very good question. I could tell you right now that my 32-year-old son doesn't want anything to do with, and he was bar mitzvahed and he wasn't brought up Orthodox. We're very lenient. We're very modern. He had a very good experience when he was in Hebrew school. There was nothing negative, and yet he has totally and completely, turned his back on practicing Judaism.
Well, I got a response to that, a short one. You can keep going in a half a second. How about if you turn him on, not to Judaism per se, but to spirituality? Does he take walks in nature?
Oh, he's extraordinarily spiritual. He does yoga. He goes outside literally every day for a half an hour before he does anything. And he meditates and he does exercises and he convenes with nature. He is very spiritual. but he's
I
not.
want you to write this down, and we'll come back to it. Look it up. Go. It's a song called "You Are the One." You Are the One. It's actually written by Debbie Friedman. I don't think she's singing it on the internet. Someone else is. But it's a song. It was inspired by Reb Nachman. Now, the brief story of Reb Nachman, and we all know this from history, many of the most brilliant people in history did not live past the age of 45. Many. Reb Nachman had tuberculosis. I believe he died at the age of 41. I'm guessing whatever the age was. He had tuberculosis for 6, 7, 8 years. He knew that his time was limited. Life was precious. And we all know, or some of us, Reb Nachman is a legend of spirituality in more Orthodox Judaism. And this song, "You Are the One," it'll blow you away, even just as a text. Okay, back to you.
Well, I was going to say, he has a very strong moral compass. He's very considerate. He's very kind. He's fiercely independent and self-reliant. I mean, he has all the wonderful traits of Judaism because I know that we instilled that in him. And I feel very blessed, that he lives this type of a lifestyle. And I know that part of it is because, we were very, very straightforward with this is good, this isn't good, this is wrong, this is not wrong, this is right, this is not right. And, that's good. And I think what's happening a lot in the world today, even with the modern Judaisms, if you will, the people that practice Judaism, people want to be their children's friends instead of their children's teachers or mentors or guides. So it was very difficult sometimes. Even with my son, he would say, well, I don't like you very much. And I used to say, well, then I must be doing something right. Because you're not supposed to like me. You're supposed to respect me. You're supposed to honor me. And if you have a difference of opinion, my husband and I will always listen. We always gave him voice, but we didn't always agree with him. And when we felt it was wrong, we stuck to our guns. And I think even modern Jews today, I think part of the reason why children don't have this very strong moral compass, many of them don't, not all of them, many of them don't, is because they are not taught this strong moral compass as children. And I think Hebrew school or participating in a temple or religious instruction gives a young child a moral compass, a road to follow. And I don't think that's being done now. The ones that are doing it, the Chabad, are so religious, they're almost fanatic, because my niece is that way, that the children are not even aware of an outside world. So at some point, I don't even know how they're going to be able to cope. So it's very confusing, and I don't know how to handle it, quite frankly. But I don't think any religious Jewish person that practices Orthodox Judaism or Chabad is going to follow our way of thinking, no matter what we do. They're just not. They're just too closed-minded. They're not going to do it.
Okay, I got an idea for that, but Stanley had his hand up.
Yes. Today I was going to the doctor. I was driving down Jog, way down towards Yamato. And all of a sudden, and I've been down there before, all of a sudden I see a sign out in front of a building. It says Modern Orthodox Synagogue. And I wondered what that was all about, because really that's kind of an oxymoron. But it got me thinking, I wonder why nobody, and maybe I don't know this, why somebody hasn't tried to modernize the Torah and eliminate those kind of things like Valerie is talking about, which is offensive to a lot of people. And there's other passages just as offensive for different reasons. And maybe you know better, Andy.
Well,
who,
yeah, I hear you. Finish your thought.
well, who, if anybody has ever tried to rewrite the Torah or refresh it.
Alec, you had your hand up?
No, I think he was just moving. I think he was just moving around.
Okay, so back to your construct of modern Orthodox. That's a very interesting, perfect segue. So I think it was back in September, maybe October. I don't remember, but it was a while back. Maybe it was August, and we had a Zoom. What was it called? Zoom and Schmooze, and it was an interesting conversation we had with about 8 or 10 people, and what's the one of the congregants that lives over in Fort Myers? Rachel Drucker, and she mentioned a particular congregation that she was affiliated with. And it looked, I started, and I wanted to track her down, and of course Sharon knows about this. Well, I couldn't reach her right away, so I did some digging on my own. And instead of finding her shul in Manhattan or New York, I found the same name, and I believe it was in Arizona. And I realized I was at the wrong address because it was modern Orthodox. However, I hung around for a little bit because I wanted to see some of the formatting of their site or some of the content, whatever. But getting back to Valerie's observation, I want you, and I want to, if Alex got to say something, this is my one little comment. I want you to envision, and I'm not saying we're doing this, but just an idea. Because how do we create a larger tent for somebody who's a little more traditional? And yet, somebody that we want to draw toward us. Well, I want to do a lot of English. I want to keep going with the guitar. However, could I see that men and women could sit separately? That for me, that could work. Not necessarily in front or in back. They would both have an equal role in leadership, but maybe they just wouldn't sit together during the service. If that's the conception that suddenly we have a larger tent, that could be a big one. Now, as far as modernizing the Torah, absolutely, let's go for it. Anyway, Alec, you got to say something? Want to share some ideas, or maybe Paul? Anybody, pop in.
Well, isn't that what the Talmud supposedly was going to do? It sort of reinterpreted the Torah, thousands of years supposedly after the Torah was written.
Well, actually, I'm glad you said that. Here's the deal. The Torah is really the bare bones. The rabbis put some meat. They're the ones that actually developed the actual practices. So the rabbis didn't really modernize it. They just accessorized it. They made it crazy is what they did with all the extra rules. I kind of make this jokingly, but I don't know. Some of you guys are dog lovers, especially Sharon. And once in a blue moon, I do walk dogs in my life, whatever. I don't know if any of you have walked a Shih Tzu, but when they have to do their business, it's a whole ritual. If you watch the little dance, and she's smiling because she knows exactly what I'm talking about, until they settle down and, okay, I'm ready now. Anyway, the punchline is one of the offensive aspects of Judaism 2,000 years ago that helped manifest Christianity was there were too many rules. It was too onerous. And so it was choking you. Now, I'll be honest with you. I grew up conservative. For me, it was too onerous. Now, I learned how to read Hebrew and chant Torah and daven, but I didn't really embrace all the rules about this holiday, about this thing, So the question is, I was really grateful for Reform Judaism and Reconstructionism and Jewish renewal. And it's like, I make these analogies. It's like going to Baskin Robbins. First, we had the Neapolitan growing up, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry. Pick your flavor. You can have any one you want. If it's one of those three, and then suddenly you end up with 30 wonderful flavors, and we're not going back to Egypt. I'm not going back to Egypt. So, Alec, you want to share some thoughts a little bit before we wrap it up?
Back to the whole moral compass thing. After I got bar mitzvahed, but not mitzvahed with my twin, me and him both kind of distanced ourselves. It's been 8 years since I've studied, practiced, listened to any type of service. And I completely lost myself, got into a little bit of trouble here and there. But as of last month, ever since I joined in every couple of times that I did, life has changed a lot. I've put in new goals, new restrictions on my life, if you will. Just not really limiting myself, but trying to like higher up myself, if you will.
Question, can I ask you how old you are?
21.
21. You're still a little wet behind the ears, but you got plenty of time. I am so proud of you that you're even sitting there just trying to say, I'm going to see, what can I glean? Now, here's the deal. Does Sharon have your email address?
Yes.
Okay.
I will
send her.
Andy.
What?
Tutored Alec and his brother and his sister Sarah for their bar and bat mitzvahs.
Beautiful, beautiful.
My
So
little
the
brother
thing
was
is,
supposed to as well, but he never got to.
Yeah.
so I'm proud of you. The thing is, there's a whole world of modern Jewish music, largely in English, very interesting stuff. I'd like to share a few things with Sharon and open up a conversation with you if you want to. And just it's not one size fits all, and it's definitely not boring. I could guarantee you it's definitely not boring. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to sing a song because I'm sure we want to do that. But before I do that, does anybody have something else they want to say?
I just want to say that with regard to what Alex just said, it's, in my opinion, it's because in his very early childhood, his much younger days, he was given a moral path to follow. And while he might have taken a little bit of a detour, if you didn't have that at the very beginning as a basis, as a foundation, you wouldn't have even known you were doing something wrong, and you would have had nothing to go back to and try to get your life back together. So that's what I was talking about before. The foundation that you were given gave you the ability to take charge of your life and do what you feel is the right thing. I know the difference.
So I'll be honest with you, lecturing and talking, I like to talk, but I like to sing better. I would have loved to have sung more, but here's the deal. This song, we opened up with Al Shosha Devarim. This also is hardcore about scripture. And it comes from the prophet Micah 6:8, chapter 6, verse 8. What does God demand of you? Only this. Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. Don't go anywhere. I'll sing it, listen. We'll talk a moment or two, and then we'll say goodbye. What does God demand of you? Only this. Only this. What does God demand of you? Only this. Only this. Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. What does God demand of you? Only this. Only this.
Andy, you mentioned You Are the One by Debbie Friedman. Maybe you can do a little tiny bit of that for us?
Well, I wish I could jump on it like I do every other song. I kind of know. That one I've never memorized, but I can sing it a cappella. Something like this. So the premise of the song is Reb Nachman whether it's him or some alter ego, goes out into the forest to commune with the one. And it goes something like this. You are the one, for this I pray, that I may have the strength to be alone, to sit among the trees and flowers and hear your voice in my soul. You are the one who holds me in the palm of your hand. I'm making up the words, but communicating the gist. And if a word I missed, you can go online and Google, you are the one. Anyway, so here, again, anyway, that's a really good one. But anyway, so here's another one which we're all familiar with, Rabbi Akiva. Now, these words by Rabbi Akiva are often attributed to Jesus. But these aren't Rabbi Akiva's words. Rabbi Akiva is citing the Torah. He's citing Leviticus 19:18. Love your neighbor as yourself. So here's the Hebrew, and then I'll do the English. ואהבת לרעך כמוך, זה כלל גדול בתורה, ואהבת לרעך כמוך, זה כלל גדול בתורה. Love your neighbor as yourself. The greatest pearl of the Torah's wealth. Love your neighbor as yourself. The greatest pearl of the Torah's wealth. ואהבת לרעך כמוך, זה כלל גדול בתורה. Okay, so let's make a few closing comments. Anybody?
I would like to
Paul's
share
very
that
quiet.
I would like to share that tomorrow night we have our Yom HaShoah Holocaust Remembrance program at 7 p.m. on Zoom. We have a hidden child survivor, Helen Daniels, who will be our guest and will be not only telling some stories, but also relating what it was like for her raising her family and communicating with them about what happened to her during the Holocaust. And I thought that was an important thing to share with people. And she has some words for that. She is going to share some of that. Rabbi will be on with us tomorrow night. He will share after Helen Daniels speaks. I have some lovely videos that I found online to share about Yom HaShoah, and I invite you all to invite other people. It is a powerful day to remember and honor those that we lost, those that served, and those that survived. So I invite you to that tomorrow night here on Zoom at 7.
So on that note, I know Harris loves to close out with some classic croon tune. Want to share something, Harris?
No, I'm going to just say that I thank you for tonight's performance. I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And so long for a while. That's all the songs for a while. So long from your hit parade.
We love it. You're awesome, dude.
Thank you, Harris.
Okay.
Join us this
Okay.
Friday night. We'll be at the Mariposa Luxury Senior Facility on Hypoluxo Road and Lyons Road in Western Lake Worth / Boynton. It will be a lovely service. This past Sunday, we had a sing-along, and we had over 45 residents attend that, and they seemed to really like Rabbi and Cantor Carol. So I think that worked out really well. I hope we'll see you either on Zoom for that or live and in person at the Mariposa.
And then what's happening on Sunday, Sharon?
Sunday, May 1st at 10 a.m., a celebration of life for Elaine Silver, our beloved co-founder of Va-Dor, our musical accompanist on the piano, our musical director, in charge of the high holidays and all the music for maybe 20 some years, passed on the 14th of April. They're going to have a lovely service for her at Beth Israel Memorial Chapel on the corner of Jog and Woolbright, followed at 1 p.m. at Temple Sinai on Atlantic Boulevard, West Atlantic Boulevard, just west of I-95 and Congress, where they'll have music, speeches, accolades, food, etc. So that's 1 p.m. at Temple Sinai, 10 a.m. at Beth Israel. In between, I think they're having it at Eternal Lights Gardens, but I think that's more for the family. I don't think they've invited everybody to that. So I think that'll be a lovely way to send a beautiful 97-year-old woman off who gave her best years to Va-Dor.
Sharon, can you
Her and
send
her
out an
husband.
email?
That was in the email that went out today at 1 o'clock.
Oh, it did. Okay.
All the details and the obituary for her. Rabbis took 2 weeks to write that obituary, and he said he had a lot. It was
Beautiful.
almost like a board meeting. All his family were saying, "Oh, change this, change that, change that." So it was he got it finally.
I
Anyway,
got one more song to send us off for the evening. It's
okay.
not even a song, it's a kavanah. It's an
Okay.
intention. I want Alec to hear this in particular. It's as we bless. And as we bless the source of light and life, so we too are blessed. As we bless the source of light, so we are blessed. As we bless the source of life, so we are blessed. And the blessing gives us strength and makes our visions clear. And the blessing gives us peace and the courage to dare. As we bless the source of life, so we are blessed. As we bless the source of light, so we are blessed.